Hello and good afternoon, Xbox Nation. Welcome to this week's new episode of X Vlog Live. I'm your host, Mr. BoomStick XL, and I am honored, privileged even, to sit down with these two fine gentlemen known as Steel Rain and C Money Forever. We have a lot to get into. We are all still in utter shock over the announcement late afternoon here on the East Coast. Literally 45 minutes before primetime gaming went live, we learned that Jim Ryan is stepping down as a CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment and the head of PlayStation. We didn't get a chance to actually read his personal press release. We will do that after intros. I have some big thoughts and some big theories. And I got to tell you, folks, I thought personally that based on the 3 billion gamers that Phil Spencer were trying to get to, a plan has been in place for Xbox to be available and accessible to more players than any other platform in gaming. And I thought before yesterday's announcement, Sony was at least minimum 5 years behind the plans that have been in full effect for Phil Spencer since he took over leadership and has excelled in those three positions to where he is now head of Microsoft Gaming. This new revelation of Jim Ryan leaving, folks, I'm here to tell you this tacks on another 3 to 5 years. And I say that because what has happened in front of us is the PlayStation that we all know and love for the single player, story driven, adult themed type of titles that are basically movies that we're playing. Well, they have moved away from that. And they have said by Jim Ryan's own words, they are taking current in-house Sony first-party studios and having them make multiplayer and gaslight games. And where I think we're going to discuss it and where I think we're going to see a problem is we saw this happen with Redfall. Redfall is a prime example of taking a single player studio and asking them to make a multiplayer experience without the proper help or the proper understanding of what makes a gas game a gas game. And if that, in fact, is the trend, well, what's going to happen when they try to do that to God of War? What's going to happen when they try to make Horizon Zero Dawn multiplayer? I don't know, but Steel Rain, welcome back, brother. How the heck are you?
Mr. BoomStick XL. We're in X Vlog house, and again, when you give me the keys and I get to slide on through the back door, make a sandwich, sit down, and chop it up with the beautiful people we got in chat, I think we're really lining up to have a beautiful show. So, but nonetheless, yes, I am the one and only Mr. Live, Raw, and Uncut himself, Steel Rain. That T is a 7 everywhere, and one half of the dynamic duo on Live a Split Screen. And again, Boom, I want to thank you for bringing me on. We got C Money in here too. We're about to have some passionate conversation today. So I think it's going to be an Attack of the Titans kind of conversation we're going to have, but many different angles to come from. And I'm ready to take that RTS approach, as you know I like to do.
Well, we're looking forward to it because, like I said, there are a bunch of layers here. I think that this is an opportunity for Xbox to put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. Sony is going to be in a bit of a tailspin. And the seriousness of Jim Ryan leaving is very apparent, C Money, and it's very apparent because of who is now in charge. Now, Herman Holtz should have been the guy to be next in line, you would imagine, right? Because Herman is a pretty cool guy, right? He is very approachable. I mean, he's not like a Phil Spencer or an Aaron Greenberg or a Sarah Bond, where he's out there handshaking with the people. He just doesn't do that. That's just not his bag. But he does what he does. And it turns out that the leader that's going to be in the interim, that's taking over all decisions starting today, is the head of Sony, folks. Not the head of Sony Interactive. Think about that for a second. The head of Sony is now taking over the reins after Jim Ryan announces he's stepping down. That's a really big deal. It is a really big deal. And I mean, you can take this in many directions. The lack of confidence of leadership currently at SIE. Is that a problem? I honestly don't know, but we will get into it. C Money, how are you feeling, brother? Welcome. Oh, he might have had to take a work call. I think he might be back in a second. You know what? Let me
get him in when he comes back.
Yeah. We'll ask him when he comes back. Kay Asante, our very good friend, part of Primetime Gaming. He's also one of the hosts of the Gaming Circle podcast, which of course we'll be doing this Saturday at 10 a.m. He puts this in as a member chat, and he's been a member for 17 months. So thank you so much for the generosity, brother. He says, salute to the panel and the chat. Greetings from somewhere in Worcester, Massachusetts. He's driving to New York right now and enjoying.
I can't wait for that show.
Now, folks, I'm not gonna suggest anything, but he's driving to New York, and I live in New York, and Everborn lives in Yonkers, New York. Could there be a meetup? It might be, but stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to talk about that later on. Listen, Steele, let's while we wait for C Money to get back here, let's talk about the shocking.
Warm it up.
The shocking announcement. Now, I do have Jim Ryan's actual statement. And I do want to read it for context. So I think it's relatively important, obviously, to the conversation we're about to have. So, folks, this is the press release from Jim Ryan via Sony, and he says this, folks. After 30 years, I have made the decision to retire from SIE in March of 2024. I've relished the opportunity to have a job I love in a very special company, working with great people and incredible partners. But I found it increasingly difficult to reconcile living in Europe and working in North America. I will leave having been privileged to work on products that have touched millions of lives across the world. PlayStation will always be a part of my life, and I feel more optimistic now than ever about the future of SIE. I want to thank Yoshida-san for placing so much trust in me and being incredibly sensitive and a supportive leader. That is, again, that's his press statement, folks. Who am I to challenge that? If he's saying it's too much of a commute, so to speak, and living in Europe and having to work here.
Family.
Listen, family first. I don't care who you are. Families should come first. But I am going to tell you my personal opinion on it. And my personal opinion I will get to after we hear what Steel Rain has to say. Steel Rain, this comes as a shock. And this also comes on the heels of a very unimpressive 2023 for Sony Interactive Entertainment on many levels. Spider-Man is going to be amazing, pun intended.
More likely.
It is going to be top tip of the spear of quality you expect from Ted Price and the team over at Insomniac Games. I can't wait for it. I'm putting everything down for Spider-Man when it comes out because I'm a Marvel stan and I'm proud of it. But that's one game. Now, we have heard the PlayStation community point the finger at Microsoft, as we have as Xbox fan, and say one is not enough. That's a failure year. That's what happened in 2022. And we gave them shit for it because they deserved it. They did not deliver. This year, Sony has not delivered through first party. And to make matters worse, Jim's leaving on the heels of this. A failed attempt at PlayStation VR 2.0. Failed. Failure. It is sitting in stacks on stacks in everywhere because no one's buying it, because they're not supporting it. And in the same year, they're releasing a handheld that you need to be in your home to play with your console on. And yeah, sure, you could take it on the go if you have Wi-Fi that's strong enough to run it. That's going to fail too. So, I mean, again, I'm not saying Jim Ryan's a failure. Jim Ryan is a businessman who's made a lot of money and sold a lot of consoles while he was head of SIE in Europe and while he was head of SIE here in the Americas. The guy has made a mint. So let's not get it twisted. No one's suggesting he failed in any way. But he did. He did. And we talked about this in the green room. And before I let you go, I want to throw this out there. And I want this to be very apparent. Folks, Jim Ryan is responsible, solely responsible for taking a spotlight and turning it on his own industry for government and for regulatory bodies around the world. And on top of that, he put all of his partners in a really bad way when it comes to acquisitions and the moving and shaking that goes on in gaming. But worse than that, folks, he has now exposed Sony's dirty dealings and how they continue to hold a death grip on publishers and developers alike in the industry. He literally ripped the curtain down and say, this is what we're doing. So now the next time they go to lock up something, maybe somebody in government gives them a dirty look, gives them the stink eye. I don't know. But I think all of those things combined are what, quote unquote, forced Jimbo to retire. But let's get your take on the surprise announcement, and if you want to add anything on the back end, please. This is a conversational podcast. Go crazy.
Yeah, so the announcement itself, it definitely was a surprise. I was sitting back yesterday playing Liza P, and when I saw I was listening to you guys, and when I saw the information kind of go live, and we got confirmation that it was truthful. Because first I believe it was Jason Schreier that kind of put it out there, and Jason Schreier's kind of been known to be he's on the pulse a lot of the times, and I give him respect for that. But also on the opposite side, he could be a bit of a D-bag, for a lack of a better way to put it. So it just depends, and I still have access to him and his content, so he hasn't blocked me yet for I guess take that as you will. But
shocking, he blocked me because I called him a pompous ass. That's why he blocked me.
I mean, you're a little bit more direct for sure, Boom. There's nothing wrong with that. You've had some good run-ins in with him, and I enjoy that. But as far as Jim Ryan goes, now I know that you're kind of not necessarily saying that Jim Ryan's a failure, whichever the case. But just staying on point with him retiring. I do think that, at least in my mindset, that this was a perfect opportunity for him to get out. The only reason that Jim was ever put in the position that he was in, because he was successful in the European market, and they needed somebody to drive that, and also in turn, since he was doing so well at his job, and again, just on a money front, getting PlayStation to a more prosperous place. Because in the PlayStation 4, as much as people give them a lot of success and whatnot, the truth has come out, and Jim Ryan has said it himself. He's actually the main proponent of why this conversation is a hit piece. Although I believe that before that, he himself had came out and said that AAA gaming, doing the single player, over the shoulder, third person kind of game, is not enough. Right, that their player base, even if it's 150 million consoles, you want to include PlayStation 4, along with PlayStation 5, no matter what that player base is, it's been proven that they have not invested enough to sustain what they were doing in the PlayStation 4 generation, which is why you've started to see a lot of these changes kind of rear their ugly head, for at least in PlayStation's perspective, seemingly. For me, I do think that him retiring is more along the lines of, this is just, he's getting up there in age, and maybe he's had enough. He's not the gamer that we kind of aspire to see from like a Phil Spencer or Herman Holst, even, who is on some of those levels. But maybe Herman Holst, again, you bring up the point that it's kind of telling that he didn't step in for Jim Ryan. Maybe Herman Holst wasn't ready to take that mantle. Maybe he didn't want to. There is that case too, right? Not everybody wants that, a lot of that responsibility up front, and not everybody's built for that. And there could also be a possibility that maybe Sony sees something and they want to be more, bring it back to the homeland, right? That could be what's going on. I don't think that they're going to bring all their operations back to Japan and everything. Again, that was closed for a reason. I think it would be kind of, at least in my perspective, a little foolish to think that Jim Ryan is the reason that PlayStation has gone the direction that they have. That's not the case. He still has a board of people that he had to report to, and of that board is who's stepping into his place right now, right? People that he had to sit down with and say, hey, this is the direction I kind of feel like we need to go. What do you guys think? And I do think over the years, we've blatantly seen that there is maybe some conflict of interest. And that could also be a reason why he was maybe, if you want to say pushed out, sure, just because, and I only can go with the pushed out side of things because we saw what happened with previous leads of Sony, right? Where it's kind of, you would think that one person would take over and then boom, Jim Ryan takes over. So it's like that didn't quite make sense, especially coming from who you had previously, who was more game design driven, who was more gaming driven and wanted to get the best of what PlayStation had to offer themselves. Where now it feels like Sony wants to get back in charge of what the future may truly be, whether it be this digital era that they're kind of seeing Microsoft make, or maybe just get more business oriented. Again, maybe get back to the PlayStation of old, PlayStation 1, 2 kind of gen, to where you put your foot on the neck of the competition because you have that brand power. Because again, to your point, Boom, with the whole FTC case, I don't necessarily think that, I think Sony played it exactly how they wanted to play it, right? It was going to be very difficult to throw up something as far as an argument goes against what was happening. And I know that I would love to think that my ideas and the things that I come up with, as obvious as they may seem to me, that I'm the person that comes up with those ideas. But these people get paid six-figure salaries a year to kind of be ahead of the ball. And it would be crazy to think that Sony had some other crazy objective or crazy thought process to fight this when we all saw it was obvious to say, well, how do you really fight this? You have your competition's number 3. They're buying somebody that really, at the end of things, doesn't really change anything for the industry outside of Call of Duty being under one umbrella. And we still had concessions to be made there regardless. If anything, we've had a proof case to show that no deal can just walk through and just get done. Now, again, you bring up like the Bungie thing, and I know people bring this up for conversation. Oh, wow, well, why that wasn't scrutinized. Well, it's also factual information that deals of a certain amount are not going to be scrutinized, especially in the gaming hemisphere. Now, that might be something different now. But like Kay Asante brought up last night on Primetime, the whole thing with Amazon is going through right now with Lena Khan and everything. I do think that is the bigger fish of things that are happening behind the scenes versus what we're seeing in gaming. So as far as Jim Ryan, I would like to think that he just met the end of his tenure, mainly because you could kind of see it in him. He already didn't present himself well as far as what you would expect for the future of Sony to be, at least in my eyes. And it was blatantly obvious that he was for the business side of things. And that's not going to be what's going to run the future of the company. You might need to bring some new blood in there. Again, Square Enix has done the same thing. New blood, somebody who is a gamer, talking with Phil Spencer. Now you see Square Enix cutting some deals for Final Fantasy 14 might be dropping in sooner because of that. I think there is a lot more happening behind the scenes as far as that goes. But Jim Ryan has led a very successful PlayStation generation, coming from the 4 to the 5 thus far. And I think for him as a businessman, as somebody who has seen the industry grow, again, that's something else that we have to keep in mind. He was with Sony kind of the same way that Phil has been with Microsoft, right? He knows how things have gone. He's seen the ebbs and flows, and maybe this was his way out and maybe getting back with family. Again, that is a real thing. But I can definitely, I hear the perspective of, and maybe C Money might touch on that. And I know you've touched on it, Boom. I can hear the perspective of saying, hey, well, he's really kind of been the reason why PlayStation is going their general direction. I think it's more so Sony's been lost since PlayStation 3. That's why they still haven't invested in multiplayer the way that they have. They don't see it as important. And I still think that they're going to fight back in some ways because they don't see it as important because their fan base doesn't see it that way, at least in my eyes. So that's my thoughts on it so far.
Yeah, I mean it's good. Some good thoughts there, dude. Some good stuff. A lot and a lot to take away. First of all, C Money, welcome back to the program, brother. I know you had to take a work.
I apologize, man. Apologize, bro. I'm in the office.
Work is real life. This is just
dodge, you know what I'm saying?
So yeah,
appreciate you being here. That's it.
But let's.
Oh, thanks, man.
Both Steele and I had a lot to say about the situation. I think the greatest thing we can say is we were all shocked by this.
Mm-hmm.
But there is, last night, Everborn Saga brought up some really amazing points. So this morning, he actually, because he likes swimming in the waters with sharks.
He does.
Of the PlayStation community. He relishes in it. He bathes in it. He loves it.
He likes to smoke. Yeah.
He loves to smoke. So he put this tweet out, and one of the things I have to bring up in conversation, because of course you're your own business owner, right? So let's say, for instance, C Money, you had someone that was representing your business working for you. You're the owner of the business. You have someone that you trust that's working for you, and that said person goes around, and in order to throw as many blockades for an ABK deal as Jim Ryan did, he literally threw everything, including the kitchen sink. He said that our business is going to be destroyed if we lose Call of Duty, showing the weakness, to the entire industry. Like we learned during these hearings that a good chunk of PlayStation's actual revenue was not from their first party. It was from Call of Duty, a third party. As a matter of fact, most of their revenue is from third-party content. That's exposing weakness. But on top of that, folks, he went around and literally lied under oath during multiple hearings and lied to regulators around the world while representing Sony. So in this tweet, he being Everborn Saga, put this PowerPoint together, which I want to read because I think it's worthy of a conversation. And he says this, folks, and C Money, by all means, take it and run with the ball after I hand this off to you. He said Jim Ryan bet the entire business on service games, which it looks like he's doing. He tarnished the brand in a futile effort to stop a deal. Remember, I don't care about a deal. I just want to block your merger. That's a stain on your business when you get caught out there saying that. Got caught lying to regulators around the world, which I just said. Exposed abusive market power, business practices to the said regulators. Canceled their Premier Studios game on a whim of a new studio that they overpaid for and almost have no control over. Talking about Bungie putting the kibosh on Naughty Dog's Last of Us multiplayer game. They literally were working on this game for years, and Bungie came in and said, nope, that's not going to work. Cancel it. I don't know, man. That's not really good. He continues with the three last ones. Has not positioned the company for the future. This is what I talked about in my opening monologue, where I believe Sony Interactive Entertainment is at minimum 7 years behind Microsoft right now today, regardless of who's in leadership. 7 years behind, right? Because think about this. They put all of these plans into effect. It takes years to turn the ship. And all of that, why do you think we have no idea what's coming from first party? Isn't, folks, and again, bear with me here, isn't Sony the same Sony that we know that lets you know as a gamer, that tries to sell you a box in 2023 and shows you a game that ain't coming out till 2027? That Sony doesn't exist anymore. That's why we have no idea what's happening in first party, because he switched all of his first party studios into doing things outside of the norm, multiplayer and gaslight games. That's why we have no idea what's happening for the remainder of 2023 past Spider-Man and all the way into 2024 and beyond. We have no idea. Finally, he says no first-party roadmap for the foreseeable future, which I literally just mentioned, and he finishes it off with nothing but success, ... Let's talk about this. Let's talk about Jim Ryan, C-Money. I want to get your hot take on the announcement and everything that both myself and Steel Rain had to say. Let's get your hot take on the future of Sony.
So, I was on the work call, so I didn't hear anything that happened pretty much until Steel Rain started
Perfectly
dropping his
fine.
bars, which were very good. Steel Rain's is the voice of reason. He has good understanding on a lot of different stuff, and I do enjoy listening to it. I feel like when I think about Jim, I feel like for me, when I look at everything that happened that led up to this moment, I just feel like he wanted to leave while they were technically still on top. And I think that he doesn't want to have to be in a situation where he overstays his welcome as the PlayStation starts to decrease its dominance, and then he looks bad in the future, right? Like that will be his legacy, right? Like the guy who came in on something that was doing great, made it good, and then tanked it, right? What he wanted to do was like, all right, shit doesn't look great right now. We lost Activision Blizzard. That did not go our way. They're not done. We know that Satya is in this, and he's not going to stop spending money. I think when he has that outlook, for him, he's like, it's a lost cause on his end because he doesn't know exactly where he's going to take it, because they're throwing shit everywhere, bro. Listen, if he wanted to seriously get into games as a service, if you want to do that seriously, you don't do that with 12 or 15 games. Okay, you don't announce that we're going to go in and do 10, 12, 15 games. You pick a few games that you're going to give it your all and actually put it out there. What he's trying to do is take a whole bunch of stuff and throw it against the wall and see what sticks, right? And that's not somebody who has a belief in this, right? That's not somebody who's sitting there saying, this is what I know to be the new way. It's like, yo, we have to do something. Because again, all the PlayStation heads right now, they're like, what are you talking about? PlayStation's so dominant. Listen, in PlayStation's world, they live on a short-term path, right? Because their dollars are short-term paths, right? Like they cannot afford to play the long haul, right? They have to win now, right? Microsoft is in the absolute best position ever in their history right now. They have everything lined up so that they can 100% be the dominant console, dominant platform. It's not even the console, bro. Like that's the stuff that changes. And that's where PlayStation, that's where I think Jim is like, shit, man. Like they're not playing the same game we are. Like we want to go out there and be like, we got 50 million consoles. Feels like 400 million people played our games across everything that we have, right? Like that's where Phil's going. Yeah, they're having different conversations, man. You know what I'm saying? Like Phil left the room and started his own chat. You know what I'm saying? He's like, we're not dealing with y'all shit no more. You know what I'm saying? Like he's not there, right? And like when you really kind of take a step back and just look at where Phil has brought his team, right? And then you go back a few months and you go back to like the Redfall era and you hear people calling for his job, right? Phil gotta go, right? Get rid of Phil. And you have all these prominent people like talking about his incompetence and what he's not able to deliver on. I think we see now, clear as day, that Phil is not the problem. Phil is doing what he knows to be the right way, right? He's taking his time, he's letting his teams work. He's not panicking and saying, no, get these games out, because we need them, or people are going to talk smack, right? No. He's listen, just do you, because it's all about quality. We have no roadmap on the PlayStation side, right? Now, obviously, we can go ahead and say to ourselves, Naughty Dog is working on something outside of Factions, right? That's not their main thing they're doing. We know Sucker Punch is going to be working on, whatever their next game is. Same thing with what they made Ghost of, is it them who made Ghost of Tsushima?
Yeah, Sucker Punch made Ghost of Tsushima. You know,
I got confused with the other guys, Days Gone people. So Ghost of Tsushima 2, we know that's coming, right? That's gonna be fire. But even like the Days Gone people, right? Like this is, man, what's really messed up is when you look at like everything that's happening right now, all these studios either shutting down, getting rid of people, games are shutting down that were just released like months ago. Like when you start seeing all this happening, and then you look at a Sony and be like, well, they're first party, so they should be able to take those risks. But their first kind of game that quote unquote flopped, which didn't flop because it actually sold a lot, but Days Gone was a phenomenal game as a start, right? A new franchise. It had good bones. You know what I'm saying? It had good bones, right? The problem that PlayStation put themselves into is that they said, you know what? Let's have Last of Us and Days Gone release in the same general vicinity. Why? Even though technically, obviously, they're different types of games, but you gotta see that the general public is not going to see it that way. They're going to see two zombie, post-apocalyptic games, and you can't do that, man. So they shit on their own game, their own franchise, and then they deny them a second chance, right?
Well, see, money to add on to that real quick, and I don't want to. Hopefully, I don't interrupt your thought process. But the other thing too about Days Gone is that although the game did decent, and although I agree with you that like Last of Us, the games are similar but also very different from each other. I think that was a very telling time for Sony also, as far as trying to decide what direction. It's like, okay, well, if we already have one zombie like a game then that's getting all this attention, then why would we support another one in that same breath? And also it's unfortunate that the dev came out after it was and threw fits, so probably burned some bridges there as far as that goes. But I'd imagine Returnal, a game that only sold 500,000 to 600,000 copies, right? From what we know, didn't even sell what Days Gone sold. I'd imagine House Marquee is going to get a second game, right? Because Returnal's for better or for worse, I know a lot of people don't like it. Maybe the game's too hard. I feel like the co-op multiplayer aspect and that is pretty dope, although I don't see many people playing it now because it didn't have that longevity. But I think that game's going to get a second one. So it's just like, where's the vision already at that point, right? At least from a perspective. So my fault.
Well, you bring up a great point because obviously the answer I would say is the dollars, right? What it costs to make Returnal is a fraction of what it costs to make a Days Gone type level, right? Like it would have to be, right? So obviously to PlayStation, being in the position they're in, when everything is going PlayStation's way, they're set, right? There's no problems because they make a lot every quarter, every month, whatever. They're funded, right?
More money than ever.
But as soon as they have to take a loss, as soon as they have to take a bath on something, that's when things get wild. And the problem with PlayStation is, again, you kind of hit it right there. They had Days Gone, they had The Last of Us, and it's like, well, fuck it, let's just still make the same, let's just put them both out. And it's like, what the problem with PlayStation is that the way I see PlayStation as a business is they lost their creativity, right? They lost their diversity. What they did is that because they're so afraid of the long-term prospect of them not making money, they double down. That's why we have that stigma that PlayStation only makes the same type of third-person cinematic over-the-shoulder games, right? Because they found something that worked and they're too afraid to go outside of that box. And they're like, nah, this is what makes us money, so we have to do this. Now, unfortunately, I think they were hoping that when they were able to say, man, we have 140 million or 120 million PlayStation 4s out there, that they would then turn around and be like, and guess what? 60 million people bought Spider-Man, or 70 million people bought God of War. This is what what Jim realized, especially you heard him make that statement, like, we need more people to play our games. They do not have 140 million or 150 million, however you want to count it, PlayStation fans. They don't. That's just the reality. They have, what's the highest selling game that they have? It has to be Spider-Man, right? I would imagine.
Yeah, I think it's Spider-Man and then God of War behind that.
Yeah.
So look,
was that
how
in the
about
20s?
this?
Spider-Man's right, 40,
you know what? See, money. Here's some great information for context. Okay, you take a game like a Spider-Man 2018, right?
Marvel IP,
right? Great IP, great game. I think they're well upwards of 30 million for that game, right? That's fantastic. But here's some numbers for context. Why Jim Ryan said you're not enough. 45 million PlayStation 5s right now, right? 118 PlayStation 4s make upwards of 163 million pieces of hardware. When you can't sell to more than, you got to remember, Nintendo, they're one of the few. Their console to software numbers are unlike anybody ever in history. It's crazy. It's upwards of 70+%. It's unheard of. Microsoft doesn't even get close. So I mean, there's something to be said, but this is why when you said when they take a bath on something, they take a bath on something.
Yeah, because they literally are essentially live like from one unit to the next, because they're not still selling like that. You know what I'm saying? Again, it's not like Nintendo where they come out with Mario Kart 8 in the beginning of the generation and everybody who buys a new Switch is still buying Mario Kart 8. You know what I'm saying?
That game came out on the Wii U.
Yeah, man. Like, it don't, like, there is wild, but that fan base loves Nintendo, right? So that fan base will buy what you give them. The PlayStation boxes that are out in the wild are not made up of PlayStation fans. They're made up of, again, you got to take Marvel, you got Spider-Man, you can't even really count him, right? Because that's a different subset of people who will buy that game. God of War is probably high selling after that, right? What was that? 20 something million? 25 maybe?
I think that hit 30.
Did it hit 30?
I think so.
I'll tell you right now.
So then that's the first one, right? The 2018 one, right?
19.5 million for God of War 2018. I got a bunch of numbers here. This is pretty interesting.
Okay, go ahead.
God of War 19.5 million. Uncharted 4, A Thief's End 16 million. The Last of Us Part 2 10 million. That's what I have for like their major first party games. Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and say 20 million between PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. Okay. There's 150 million, 160 million
between both. 163. Yeah, about 163 to be exact. Yeah.
So you figure that is essentially their highest selling game. The highest one has about a 13% attach rate, meaning 13% of everyone who owns a PlayStation went ahead and bought that game. Okay. What that tells you is that even if we round that number up, okay, let's say let's double it, right? Let's say potentially there's 40 million people who are hardcore enough to buy the hardcore games, right? That still leaves 100 million people who show up because that's the popular box, not because it's a PlayStation. Let's make this clear. these people show up because they're going to play Call of Duty, they're going to play Fortnite, they're going to play Madden, they're going to play NBA 2K. They're playing the mainstream games that are on both consoles. So it has nothing to do with the fact that PlayStation is the brand that they want to buy. No, it has everything to do with where are my friends playing. They're playing on the PlayStation.
Well, it's the zeitgeist console.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
That people sweat right now, right? But the question is, once Xbox finishes this ABK merger, and we're not flipping a switch here, right? But month in, month out, year in, year out, they go ahead and you keep seeing play Call of Duty day one, Game Pass. Play Call of Duty day one, Game Pass. Play Call of Duty day one, Game Pass. Everywhere you go, slowly but surely, those casual people will slowly start making moves because they're not tied to the box, right? So this generation is done. Right? Nobody's changing this gen, right? So those PlayStation people, they're just going to keep playing it where they're playing it, right? But it's the question of when they go buy a new box. Digital, as much as people say, right, that, oh, people are already building their digital library, so people don't want to switch. First of all, you're not getting rid of your old PlayStation, right? So having the ability to play the games you already bought on your PlayStation doesn't go away, right? Secondly, we know that PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5, there was no big benefit to playing your old games on a PlayStation 5, right? Let's be clear, that very minimal benefit, right?
There is a benefit when you pay $10 to upgrade your
vision. You pay for those premium upgrades, right?
That's correct. Yes.
But the actual Xbox is the one where if you had an old game and you played it here, you got better resolution, higher frame rates, all this fun stuff, right? PlayStation did not do that, right? So there's nothing to show us that they will do that, right? Because all this way in, they haven't figured it out, right? Anything's a possibility, but if we had to bet dollars, right, I'm not putting my money on that, right? Because they haven't showed me the desire to do that in the 3 years that they've been going. They still charge for whatever upgrade they want to do, right? They've done it every time. So the again, not flipping a switch, but when you come by and think about how easy it is to get into Game Pass, right? You don't need to go buy an Xbox. You can do it on your PC. You could go get a ROG Ally. You can go. There's many different ways you can get in to the ecosystem of
TV
Xbox
right now.
On the TVs, 100%.
I think we're still a little bit away from that cloud gaming aspect of it, but yeah.
Well, it's funny because I think the thing is I think cloud gaming right now is more of a if you know type situation. Because I could tell you right now, I played most of Starfield now on cloud. I play on GeForce Now on my handheld because that's where I have the most availability to do it when I have time spent. And it's amazing. The shit plays like it plays better than local on the ROG Ally. So I'd rather play streaming from GeForce Now than there. So again, obviously, as it continues to go further and further, we heard the Ubisoft Eves kind of put in some words about it, how he's seeing that Netflix style of what Netflix did to movies and TV. That's what's going to happen. And that's what they've been saying for a long time. But now as the content is there, just like with Netflix, let's be clear. Netflix didn't flip a switch and say, hey, we're streaming movies, come here. No, everybody said the same thing. Nah, man, I need my physical disc. I'm not playing it. Look at how bad it looks. Look at the compression. Look at this, look at that, right? And then, oh, they don't have any content. Why would I go subscribe over there? Guess what? They solved all those problems, right? Unless you're a super duper like media, like I don't even know what they're called, but like people who are obsessed with how the movie looks like perfectly, right? Unless you're that person, the masses could care less, man. I stream that shit 4K. It takes me 2 seconds to click a button and I got it, man. It takes no time and no effort whatsoever. Again, right now, it's only going to be the people who look at cloud that way right now who are going to take advantage of that. But eventually, it'll get to the point where you're just going to look at it and be like, well, I could go buy that console, but I also can just stream the shit right here. And it works just like, it probably works better than if I was local because they have more cloud enhancements and things like that. I mean, we going into the future of what things are happening, that's a whole different discussion. I don't want to get too far.
We're a little bit away from that, I think, for sure.
Yeah,
going that direction, but a lot to prove.
We're definitely going in direction, and that's the thing, right? So it's like, you know, if I'm going to drive to California, I'm far away, right? But if I get in a car now and start driving, eventually I'm going to get there.
Yeah,
that's where we're going, right? It's the future is kind of already laid out ahead of us in that respect. But as far as like the whole thing with Jim Ryan and what he did and why he got taken out. I mean, this is I don't for a second think there's any retirement situation happening here. If ABK got blocked, we would not be seeing Jimmy Boy retiring. Fact. It just wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. Because he'll be riding high, right? And he'll have everything going his way. But the fact of the matter is, with Xbox making the moves that they're making, again, remember, man, Jim Ryan, he put these things in motion, but Bungie came in and stopped that shit because he's like, yo, what are you doing? This is not the way. This is not going to work. So who's to say we haven't seen that happen through multiple of the jobs of the games that they're making right now, of these games as service situation, right? It's very, like, in my mind, again, obviously it's just my opinion when I look at it. Homeboy left now, or he's planning to leave now, while technically PlayStation's still on top, while he still has the credits under his name that he took us to this point, right? And what is this? What are we in the 9th generation? He won the 9th generation for PlayStation, right? I just don't see that same scenario going forward, especially how far away we are from that next generation. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of us thought that this generation would be the generation that Xbox kind of turned the corner, right? But to be fair, they were not, with COVID and everything, their big games were not ready at the beginning of this generation to make people want to go ahead and make a different choice than what they've currently done. Going forward, though, they are not only going to be releasing these amazing big AAA titles every single quarter going forward, right? But they're also stacking those games, right? So those games are in the service now. So remember, it's not just one comes out and that's it. One comes out and then that other one is still there. So people who are not in the ecosystem, one day they're going to look and see that Game Pass and say, holy hell, I can go jump into Game Pass and play Starfield, Fable, Avowed, Hellblade 2, Forza Motorsport, like, and then Clockwork Revolution, and then whatever else they got coming, Doom, the next one, Indiana.
This is why, again, all of what you're saying is why I say, C Money, from just a layman point of view. We're not getting technical. I don't have a degree for business, but I can tell you this is why everything that you're saying, Microsoft has in the chamber. Sony does not. They are just now starting to dip the toe in, and this is why they're behind. And you know what? I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it. I'm probably going to get some flack for it, but it's fine. I think personally, when you compare how Sean Layden left PlayStation and how Jim Ryan is leaving PlayStation, two different conversations. Jim Ryan gets credit for everything that was left before him thanks to the prior leadership. Jim Ryan is leaving, in my personal opinion, when you compare both leaders, PlayStation in a worse state. Prove me wrong. Straight up.
I mean, obviously they could change that narrative next month and drop a showcase or a state of play, whatever they call them, and show us a whole bunch of stuff that's coming, right? And that can change that narrative real quick.
Yeah, but next year could be fire.
Yeah, it's just that obviously, like, I get, maybe they don't want to cloud Spider-Man. They don't want to kind of like put a bunch of things out there and kind of dilute the hypeness for Spider-Man or whatever. So maybe it's going to be an after October situation where we see more because they want to, let Spider-Man get its due. But I mean, shit, even when you look at Spider-Man, bro, like, Spider-Man looks good. Like, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't look next gen PlayStation 5 only good, right? Like, that this does not look like someone who took a game and said, let's make it the next step, right? Because this was they worked on this game for PlayStation. Like, this is not like Miles Morales or anything like that was like this in between. Like, it looks better now. This last trailer, it looks better than the first time they showed us, but it's still the same bones, right? They didn't go anywhere crazy and like really change it. So we have yet to really see, honestly, anything that looks like, holy hell, this is the next gen that we thought was going to happen on really either side. I mean, Starfield is
that's
grand.
Perspective though too, right? Because you could make a fight back and say Forbidden West is that, right? There's Forbidden West is on the levels of a Red Dead Redemption 2 as far as quality goes, right? If that's
it's a quality game,
graphics wise, right? If that's what your focus is, right? Quality is always going to be subjective to different people, but there's a reason why the popularity of PlayStation has carried itself for so long, and why they get that quality mark, even if the competitor puts out a quality game also, right? I can say the same thing about Zelda. Zelda could be seen as a quality game, right? It has good gameplay. The graphics aren't what they should be for a Zelda game. I feel like that does the game a disservice. Nintendo is messing up by not putting that game on PC, allowing a whole nother audience to invest into their ecosystem as they get this new hardware, right? And that's kind of what we're seeing from Sony too, where it's just like, I don't know if it's necessarily like them not being in line with competition or not knowing essentially what works for them, but it's more so I do think that they are lost in the sauce, like Boom was kind of putting it. I don't think they're as far as behind 7 years per se, but they are definitely behind this whole service thing. But the other side of that coin, though, is that what Xbox is doing with Game Pass is so unique and something that I do support, and I know we support, and we see the successes because we talk about it all the time. We come up with evidence of 2 ways from Sunday about why Game Pass makes sense. But there's also another side of that argument that states, well, it's not quite proven yet. Like Microsoft can say, oh, this is working all day long, but we all also know that Microsoft can afford to lose something. PlayStation can't, right? So that could be also the other part of that conversation or that coin, where it's just like, all right, well, Jim's at the high point, he backs out, and it's like, all right, now we need to get back on this vision. Services might work, but again, Bungie came in. I don't agree with it because Bungie isn't handling Destiny very well, in my opinion. So why
that blows my mind too?
Somebody else?
It blows my mind.
So that in itself has made me question PlayStation more than any other of their other things that they have done outside of not supporting their multiplayer, like factions. I can go on a 2-hour rant about factions every time that I talk about it, because that is the one thing that I would be like, oh, that's going to be PlayStation only. If you told me that game is not coming to PC, period, even though I know it's going to, because it's a live service games. All of your live service games are coming to PC. I put that out there. Anybody can challenge it. You can quote me on this later. I'm telling you now, if it's a live service game, it is coming to PC, because they have to expand the market out. This industry, and I know some people were talking about this, oh, well, Sony's gonna they brought that guy in for Japan so they can focus more in. And sure, they can, but you can't back out of live service now. You have teams, and because of how Sony's money is set up, you're not Microsoft where they could have told Redfall, hey, y'all gonna have to shelf that if they had better insight, right? I mean, their own team rated it 10 points higher, 20 points higher than what the reality was. So that kind of tells you about that. And we had that, and we had those conversations.
And we gave them the smoke for it.
Exactly. The same way that we should with PlayStation, some of the strategies that they're applying right now, as far as being very weak on the services side or multiplayer side of things. But again, their player base continues to speak against that. If it's not Call of Duty, if it's not Overwatch, for as an example, now they got Roblox, so that's going to help their ecosystem. But those are the types of things, those are the type of deals they're finally. And that's the thing that I think is the biggest attractor for me. You're finally having to cut other third-party deals outside of just Call of Duty knowing now that you were depending on a lot of those funds from Call of Duty to support your first party,
That's crazy.
You have to reevaluate things. Hey, yeah, Jim, look, man, this is your golden parachute moment. We'll bring Japan in, we'll bring everything, we'll get the direction moving, but this is the moment if you're going to jump off this ship, because we know how tedious gaming is, right? We're such an I think that's what makes this the true golden age of gaming for me. Shout out to my brother Pong. It is really limitless on what direction we're going to go next. Is digital really going to pay off the way that we think it is? Or are we going to miraculously get a fan base of people that want more of that? Oh, well, we still need we need ownership, and we'll get back to that conversation. And we're not just getting discs that are empty and you're paying for a license. Do we get that back in there? I don't know, but it's a very unique place because there's so many different ways this can go, especially considering what is technology going to be within the next 5 years, even, right?
Exactly.
Which is
crazy.
Also going to determine that. So.
Exactly.
Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel that. I mean, when I was talking about like next gen, gameplay, obviously that stuff is that I'm not concerned about because people make great games all the time, right? When I think about next gen, I more think about like pushing the limits of what was capable. And obviously, like Horizon Forbidden West, it was shined up real nice for the PlayStation 5, but obviously it came out on PlayStation 4, which means that it was like the bones of the game are PlayStation 4, and they just took the extra power and like spiffed it up, right? So it's definitely not something that I would look at and be like, that was a next gen game. It was just the next gen version of a PlayStation 4 game, right? Which is fine. And I mean, when you talk about like where we're gonna go, I mean, I think I agree, man. Like that's the most exciting part of it. Like I'm super down for like anything and everything. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever cool shit comes our way, like I'm ready for it. I do feel ultimately like, digital will be the way. Which is again, the same argument that is held against gaming. Oh, people, can't, have internet or whatever like that. I mean, listen, do I think that the discs are going to go away? No, I think that they'll always make a box where you can get a disc. But will that be the dominant way that people are playing, 10, 15, 20 years from now? I mean, probably not, because it's probably just cheaper to have the tech do it. I mean, you look at a game like Flight Simulator, that is
crazy.
astonishing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's astonishing, right? It's astonishing. And it's good. Well, the reason why you can imagine it is because it's not actually on the console, right? It's very little on the console.
Yes.
It's all on the cloud.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, the fact that game exists right now,
unique,
pretty much shows you that the kind of base is there. The foundation is there to be able to let you have local input, so it feels, good, but being powered by the cloud, which can do everything else, right? So, like, there's so many different ways that this can go and play out, and that's why shows like this are so dope, because we can all kind of hypothesize and like just think about what can be, right? Because that's what's exciting about this future. Unlike movies, right? Movies are whack. Not watching a movie. There's nobody wondering like, oh man, what's the next big thing coming in movies, right? Like what, drone
we used to, right? Yeah, we used
to. Yeah, but we've already reached the pinnacle. You know what I'm saying? Right. Now it's just, better cameras, you know what I'm saying? Better sound, but like there's no
better angles.
Yeah, better angles. Like who comes up with these, body cam stuff? But like stuff like that, that's where it is. And nobody has that conversation, right? Like I listen to podcasts, some podcasts that focus on that stuff, and they're never talking about like what's the newest dope idea of technology that's going to come. Games have that, right? Games are, for all intents and purposes, man, limitless. Like there's no limit to what can be achieved. It's just going to be time, tech, and talent, right? And that's what it is, right? So like that's what excites me, and I feel like PlayStation not being led by a gamer is their downfall. Right now, they got their business stuff in line. Great. The problem is that the world is moving on from just what they define as a great game, right? Because again, if it were the case that we were wrong and that is the golden path, that type of game is the only game that people are going to be excited about, well, then somebody has to send a letter or a message to the 100 million people who didn't think so, who own a PlayStation, right? Like they had it available to them and they chose not to partake, right? So, I mean, unfortunately, unfortunately for PlayStation, gaming is moving forward, right? Gaming is moving on. Xbox did have the hindsight, even though they had the people making fun of them, right? People laughing at them. You had Sea of Thieves, right? You had Grounded. All games that
Do you know what they just announced, C-Money? It's funny you say that. Literally, you know what they literally just got dropped into my DM? What? Minecraft Dungeons crossed 25 million players. That's a live service game, right? Now that's not exclusive to Xbox. That is a live service game that you can play on your Switch, play on your PlayStation 4, you can play on your PlayStation 5, you could play on your refrigerator. But you see, this is what exactly C-Money is talking about. And again, Jim Ryan, we don't know if he was anti-future or he was the future, and Sony Japan was like, nah, man, we don't like where this is going. We're wasting all this money. We're not putting out the first-party games. People, because they're selling the console. The console is selling like hotcakes, but they don't make money on the console. They make money on the software.
Yeah.
But look, at the end of the day, this was a phenomenal conversation. Again, this is normally a 70-minute show. It's a little smaller. It's meant to be one-on-one today. We actually were very privileged to have both C-Money and Steel Rain take an hour of their day to come hang out. I do want to catch up on Super Chats. We'll get some final thoughts on what happens to Sony now, and then we'll get everyone out of here. And of course, before we even do all of that, I want to remind everybody, tomorrow morning's Breakfast with Boom is the 6th annual Boom's Birthday Bash. Mrs. Boom and I are giving away $500 worth of gift cards. That's right, 10 $50 gift cards. And all you have to do is be in the chat to win. And we're going to let the picker do it live on the air. It's going to pick the winner. And you tell me where you want the gift card, whether that be Nintendo's online service, PSN, or Xbox Live, and we get you the code. And if you are outside of the Americas, we will honor the winnings as long as we can do it through PayPal. That's the only way we will do it. We will send you the $50 through PayPal. Make sure that you get your winnings, because if you support us here, even if you're outside of the country, we will support you as well. JFX88 drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, Jim, it was only difficult to travel because you insisted on flying all over the world to block Microsoft. That is slander. That is very true. Highlander 001 drops to $2 super chat and says, Sony's stock took a hit yesterday. So there's that. Yeah, when you have a big executive leave, you do feel it on the back end when it comes to confidence in the brand, and the stock market lets you know about yourself very quickly. Drawn TJ drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, I say Sony gets bought by Apple and Xbox by Valve as the last purchase. I mean, Valve would be a really hard one. I don't know if that would be considered. That might be considered a horizontal merger rather than a vertical, because of what Microsoft currently has and what Valve actually has. I don't know if that would work. I mean, it's possible they could actually invest their monies into Valve, but that's interesting. The Apple buying Sony thing. I mean, Apple is looking to buy Disney. I don't know if that's going to happen or it's not, but the Sony thing it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. Splendiferous drops not one but $2 super chats. And the first one, he says, Jim Ryan has accomplished nothing. PlayStation VR failed bad. Yeah, it absolutely did. He says remakes are not new IPs. Jim, lived on the Sony name. And I think he's onto something. I mean this wholeheartedly. Sean Layden got a really raw deal. When that guy left, you didn't even hear that he left. He went into witness protection for 2 years. We didn't hear.
Embarrassing.
Right? The way that they treated Sean Layden was gross and disgusting on a level I've never seen before. Jim Ryan's getting the flowers, and he shouldn't, because his success is on the coattails of Sean Layden and what he did while he was there. That's why I mean, if you want to be real here, folks, you really want to keep it a buck, as the kids like to say. Let's just measure, and I'm not talking measuring D's. I'm talking about measuring success. Pause right there. Sean Layden's the way he left PlayStation is leaps and bounds better than Jim Ryan is leaving PlayStation. I am telling you. Now, you may disagree with me, and that's fine. We can have a conversation. But I'm a fan of Sean Layden, and the way they treated him and what he did for PlayStation is great. Why PlayStation is successful. Straight up.
That's the reason.
We have Gamer by Choice drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, "C Money is right. Gaming is moving past the games that we like. More people on mobile and PC than console, and most are probably playing non-AAA games indeed." And Joel Familia drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, "What are your thoughts on the possible writer's strike for video games? If it occurs, will it have a large impact on the video game industry?" Probably. But I don't know if there's not really a union. Microsoft is opening the door for unions now with the whole ABK thing, and I think that is brilliant. I think that you should have. I was in a union, and I would not work without one, because you need protection, and unions are just that. I don't know. That's an interesting thought and theory. I mean, obviously the writer's strike for Hollywood is over, and the actors' strike is they're talking. So maybe the actors get back to work. We don't know, but I don't know how that's going to affect video games. It could, but also I don't know how they correlate with one another. Steel Rain, before we do your outro, any final thoughts you want to kind of drop before we get you on out of here?
Other than it's just I could tell when you have more of the perspective that I'm coming from, at least, that I'm not as critical, right, of what Sony may be doing. And not everybody vibes with that, which is how things should be, right? It should be different perspectives, people coming from different angles. And as much as I do agree, again, PlayStation still hasn't given me a reason to invest in their ecosystem, and they probably won't for some time. Again, Spider-Man, as great as it is, and I loved it, but it coming to PC, 2018 was great, but it coming to PC and playing that same experience there, just no comparison, right? Which gave me all the bones that I needed to say, hey, well, I might as well just wait for your next game to come to PC, because I know I'm going to get the better experience later. Sony has also solidified a lot of the thought process for me in gaming, that single player games are always better later. I'm continuing to find that out with other games too. So it's everything is subjective, and it depends on what ecosystem that you support. But I do think that people should continue to come together, continue to have these open conversations, and hit the different angles and understand why you're in gaming in the first place, what you support, and stand ground in the things that you believe in, man. You know what I mean? The Xbox ecosystem is great because it's been so seamless almost since the 360 generation, with cloud saves as an example. When you look over to the competition, if you don't refresh with them within 90 days, they get rid of your saves. It's just there's certain things within a hobby, within a passion that you have, that you shouldn't have to worry about. And that's why I put as much faith as I do in the Xbox ecosystem. So shout out to Jim Ryan for everything that he's done. I think there's bigger and better on the way. We need a gamer in there now. I think that's kind of been proven too. We need somebody who understands what the community is looking for, the creativity side of things. Because again, I brought up this point earlier, and I'll leave it at that and get my outro out the way. There's no reason why a new acquisition should be able to tell your first party what's right and what's wrong, unless you clearly don't have vision. So
Yep.
that's
Or
just my
confidence
perspective.
in your own teams. That's the
just-
other
Well,
thing.
just
they
my
already said it. They showed us the whole time during the trial that their teams are not capable teams. That's what they said.
Well, Jim
Because they
Ryan
said
actually said
Call
that.
of
Yeah.
Duty is the only thing that matters to us. And then they
That-
said, you know what? Let's get Bungie in here, who, like Steel
Foam
Ray, you
Stars is
said
coming.
last time, blows my mind because Bungie shit the bed the entire time. And they have fans in spite of them, not because of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't see how this made sense. How you gonna have Bungie tell Naughty Dog that their game ain't right? You know what I'm saying? Like, get out of here, man.
Again,
that's
I
crazy.
mean, when you leave it out of your your new remake remaster, I think that also tells you enough that just they didn't see that, they didn't have the vision with it. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me Steel Rain. The T is a 7 everywhere. Google's probably the easiest place to type that information in. You'll get everything there. But I frequent the streets of Twitter, otherwise known as X, in the Xbox ecosystem. Hit me up in the DMs or in a message. I'm not one of those people that hide from people. If you come through and hit me up, let's chop it up. Let's get together and let's have a fun time. Other than that, every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern, and 3 p.m. UK time. I got a non-console centric platform with my brother from another, the dynamic duo known as Living Split Screen. Again, where we take that RTS approach. We just pull ourselves out of the world, look at the darker crevices of the map, the gaming industry in this example, pull our resources together so we can build up towards those 3 billion gamers that Phil Spencer always talks about. In chat, y'all were on fire tonight. I saw a lot of great opinions in there. Most of the time, a lot of the people that I see most of the time out here in these streets, y'all consistently bringing good value to the conversation. And other than that, C Money was also a great podcast with you because I know we don't get together often, but boom, thanks for having me, man.
It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure and an honor. Drawn TJ drops an additional $5 super chat and says, Valve is a private company and they're worth $2 billion. But they all, yeah, I mean, you're right. They do, but they do own Steam. And I don't, I mean, listen, I'm all for acquisitions. I don't necessarily know if Microsoft, quote unquote, needs them. But if Gabe Newell wants to leave the business, and I believe that he wants to retire, I think he would be very, very comfortable selling it, his business that he built, his baby, from the ground up to Microsoft rather than something like a Tencent or something. So who knows? Who knows? Acquisition season is going to be opening once we get past next week. We get past the 6th. This deal is going to get signed probably that Monday, which of course would be the 9th, I think, and it's going to be a done deal. And Microsoft is going to move on to bigger, better things in the form of bringing some people in-house, like the potential Crystal Dynamics and the Eidos Montreal and the IO Interactive and potentially Certain Affinity. They need to bring all of these studios that are working on major first-party IPs in-house, give them the protection, give them the funding, give them the time to work on these games. And when they release like Starfield. And because they have so many studios, which, by the way, once ABK is done, they'll have 35 named studios, but they will have nearly 50 studios when you consider Infinity Ward has like 5 around the world, and Treyarch has 3 around the world. So when you consider the other studios, they'll have closer to 50. They'll be able to logistically take their time, put 5 years, put 6 years, put 7 years into a game because they have so many studios making so much content. Mind you, this is without second and third party deals for Game Pass and indies. Microsoft is in such a good position. It's bonkers. But C Money, let's sell your brand, brother. You and the missus do an amazing job on your new entry to your plethora of podcasts known as Him, Her, and a Guest. I happen to be one of those guests. You happen to have Colt Eastwood on this week, which was an amazing show. You had King David, the king himself, the week before. Obviously, the dynamic duo known as Doodle and C Money are going to be making their guest appearance on Primetime Gaming next Wednesday evening. Sell your brand, brother. Talk about the best place for, again, a plethora of content, but again, done in a way that's unusual and fun and different, that you podcast with the family. Talk about it, brother. Sell the brand.
Yeah, man, for sure. Well, first of all, Boom, obviously, thank you for having me on. You called me. I was like, yeah, all right, I'll figure it out. Give me a few minutes. I'll make some moves. I'll make it happen. So definitely appreciate that. Steel, man, always a pleasure, bro. Love your takes. Your show is dope. You guys
Appreciate
do
that, man.
have such a unique kind of way of like dropping your bars. Like it's dope. So much respect. Yeah, so we do have our channels called On Point for Gamers. First of all, C Money, you can follow me at C Money Forever. It's right there on Twitter. Doodle's in the chat. She's Doodle to be free on Twitter, so you can follow her as well. As far as the shows are concerned, yeah, we had the show that we made new, Her, Him, and the Guests. That is an awesome show. We've been loving doing it. It's been so fun. We've had, Boom did bless us as the first guest. So that was such a dope thing, and we really appreciate
My
it.
complete honor.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
yeah, man, absolutely. It's so fun, man. It was a good time. So 2 days ago, was it Tuesday? We had our latest episode, which was in fact with our boy Colt Eastwood. Really, really good show. If you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. It's 100% worth the watch. We had Mav on, we had King on, and this upcoming week, so this upcoming Tuesday, we have the one and only Dirt Griggity coming and
That's
rock
good
with
stuff.
us,
He's a trip,
which
that
is
dude.
yes, which is super dope. Can't wait to kind of dive deep with him, chop it up, and see, get a little deeper insight. You know what I'm saying? So that's super exciting. So that's a fun time. Now, we normally have our podcast on Saturdays. Our gaming podcast called On Point, the gaming newscast. Normally at 3 p.m. Eastern time, but this Saturday, me and Doodle, our twins, have their birthday, and they're going to be 4.
Oh.
So we're going to be spending the day with them. So we will not be podcasting then. And we were going to go ahead and kind of move it to Sunday. But then all this news dropped, and I was like, you know what? I want to watch ILP, so I'm not going to be having my podcast at that time. So we're actually going to go early. We're actually going tonight. Okay, we're moving it up. We're going to go at 6 p.m. Eastern time tonight, and just kind of dive in, man. There's so much to talk about with this. We just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to go into. It's very exciting. Crazy times, unexpected times. So that's going to be tonight. Tomorrow we have our show On Point. Not tomorrow. Wait, what's today? Thursday? Shit, man. Time flies, bro. Fridays.
I told my brother I thought today was Tuesday. That sounds
yeah, man. I got all mixed up. I thought we did Colt yesterday.
I mean, it's Thursday. I'm like, man. Oh my god, crazy.
These days get all mixed up, yo. So Friday nights, which is tomorrow, normally 9 p.m. Eastern time, we have On Point Anime and Beyond. It's where we talk about, anime, TV shows, movies, all that fun stuff in the pop culture world that used to be part of our main podcast. We ripped it out, gave it its own time. So it's normally at 9 p.m. But this particular week, again, things are everywhere. Tomorrow we'll be going live at 6 p.m. Eastern time as well for On Point Anime and Beyond, because we had Mav on a couple weeks ago, and we're going to be joining Mav on his show tomorrow night. Doodle and myself will both be on the show, so definitely come hop in on that, because that's going to be a fun time. And then our last show is on Monday mornings. It's called Morning Quest. It's just a show with me and Doodle. We just basically start the week off right, talking about some gaming, talking about any news that kind of came over the weekend, or things that we couldn't quite dive too deep into, or really whatever we want to talk about. It's a super chat focused like show. So it's like, being there and we're all just kind of throwing everything around. It's a fun time. But guys, I really appreciate you, indulging my talk here. I do appreciate you guys being a part of this channel. Boom, Steel Rain. It was so dope to rock with you guys again. If you guys do come by, check out the channel. We appreciate the subscription. Hit the like buttons on our shows and hit the bell. We're on our road to 11K.
Yep.
So we're almost there, man. We're like 80 away or 85 away. So yeah, man. Aside from that, thanks everybody.
Good stuff. Both of you guys do great work, and obviously you're both pillars of the community, and it's incredibly important to support you. So, folks, all of their information are in the show notes. All you gotta do is double click it. 1, to get there to their YouTube channel, and 2, to sub. If you want to be generous and do a third click, and hopefully you don't sprain your finger in doing so. You can hit the bell icon to find out when they go live. Real quick, folks, we are 12 subs away from hitting the halfway mark from 14K.
Let's do it.
13.5.
Let's go.
If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Again, the goal that Mrs. Boom and I had set forth for ourselves was 15K for 2023. We don't know if we're going to hit it, but we'd of course love to get 14K. If you're finding the channel for the first time, I do this Monday through Friday, all different shows, all different panels, and all great content. We never sell you hate. We never give you disingenuous takes to try and get your sub, your like, or your share. None of that. We talk about video games. We do give smoke where it's necessary, but we are also always truthful. And the panel that I have put together on each one of these shows are legit, incredible community members that not only are on my panels, but have their own YouTube channels, which of course you should be subscribed to. And of course, a big thank you to all of the super chats that have come in. They continue to power the show, and they do allow for us to do these big giveaways. And there is another one coming up tomorrow for $500. We have let's see, another super chat came in for £2. It's Munter Yoshi drops a very generous £2 super chat and says, "Hi, Boom, keep up the great work. Thank you so much for the generosity and of course the kind words. And thank you for being here today." I want to close out the show, folks, with something that's incredibly important to me. Hopefully one day it'll be important to you. And that's something that my awesome dad taught me with kids. And he would say, "Craig, treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, Craig. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day." So take care, everyone. And we'll see you next week on the newest episode of X Vlog Live.